Three Ukrainian soldiers held an observation post at the edge of a village where the fog was so thick they couldn't see their own hands in front of their faces. 40 Russian soldiers were walking toward them, and for the first several minutes, nobody on either side could see a single one of them. The only eyes that actually worked that morning belonged to a machine crawling along the ground, not to anyone in the sky. Tonight's story is about a single engagement near the village of Vishneve in Dnipropetrovsk region, and about what happens when the weapon this war has come to depend on most, the drone overhead, simply stops working and somebody has to improvise an answer in real time, with nothing more than what happened to already be sitting nearby. Welcome back. Let's start with the morning the fog came down. Thick fog settled along the Yanshure River, cutting visibility to just a few meters for soldiers and drone operators on both sides. Russian commanders read that fog as an opportunity. With Ukrainian aerial reconnaissance effectively blind, they launched a surprise assault, moving 2 Ural trucks and a buggy loaded with roughly 40 soldiers toward the southern edge of the village. The Ukrainian observation post in their path held exactly 3 men. Here's the detail that made this genuinely dangerous rather than just tense. The fog didn't just blind the defenders, it let the Russian force close to within about 150 meters before anyone could physically see them. Sound reached the Ukrainians first. Engines, then the specific cadence of infantry dismounting nearby. 3 men in one house at the edge of a village, listening to roughly 40 soldiers arrive close enough to touch with no visual confirmation of where any of them actually were. This is where the story stops being about bad luck and starts being about improvisation. Ukrainian drone operators began searching anyway, despite conditions that should have made it pointless, and found the vehicles before losing them again to the mist. A fragile, momentary glimpse through the fog that gave the command post just enough warning to know an assault of this size was actually inbound. The defenders occupied firing positions inside the outermost house as Russian infantry advanced through the fog toward them, and a close-range firefight opened almost immediately. Looking out through the windows, the 3 Ukrainians could confirm at least 10 Russians nearby, and suspected far more were still hidden in the mist around them. Their battalion commander's response was the actual turning point of the entire engagement. With aerial drones useless, he redirected a ground robot toward the defender's position, repurposing it as a mobile reconnaissance platform. Visibility near ground level, it turned out, was measurably better than visibility from altitude. Fog tends to sit thicker, higher up, closer to where a quadcopter would normally fly, then right at head height where a wheeled or tracked robot moves. The UGV began transmitting a live feed back to the command post, and the commander started directing his 3 soldiers in real time, describing exactly where Russian soldiers were emerging from the mist before the defenders could see them with their own eyes. It's a strange image to picture. A small unmanned vehicle, built to carry supplies or clear buildings, suddenly repurposed mid-battle into the only working set of eyes for an entire engagement, simply because nobody higher up the chain had thought to write a rule against using it that way. Nobody had trained specifically for this scenario beforehand, either. The decision to hand real-time targeting instructions to 3 infantrymen based on a ground robot's camera feed was invented on the spot, by a commander working with whatever equipment happened to already be assigned to his unit that particular morning. Guided by those images, the 3 Ukrainians fought with a precision the fog should have made impossible. The first 2 attackers advancing toward the house went down almost immediately. A second pair tried the right flank. The ground robot's feed had already flagged exactly where they'd appear, and both fell in turn. A third pair followed the same pattern. By the defender's own count, small arms fire alone had accounted for 6 confirmed Russian dead, fired by 3 men who, without that ground-level camera feed, would have been shooting blind into fog at sounds they couldn't place. Then, a Vampire heavy strike drone arrived, carrying explosive munitions, and ran into the exact same problem the aerial reconnaissance drones had. Its own pilot couldn't see the battlefield through the fog either. So the operator did the only thing that made sense. Flew entirely on the ground robot's live feed instead of his own drone's camera, released the munition into the center of a Russian cluster the ground unit had identified and, according to the Ukrainian account of the engagement, killed 7 more soldiers in that single strike. Think about what that actually required in the moment. A drone pilot agreeing to fly a live munition toward a target he could not personally see, trusting a video feed from a completely different piece of equipment operated by someone else entirely. because the alternative was not flying at all. That handoff, one operator's eyes standing in for another's, is the exact kind of improvisation that never appears in a manual, because nobody writes a manual around the assumption that the sky itself might simply stop cooperating halfway through a fight. Roughly 30 minutes in, the weather started to shift. As visibility improved, Ukrainian FPV drones finally joined the fight directly. Russian soldiers trying to avoid the accurate rifle fire still coming from inside the house found themselves pushed into open streets instead, exactly where FPV operators, now able to see again, picked them off one at a time. The three defenders kept firing through their windows the entire time, still receiving live guidance, methodically clearing garages, sheds, and any position nearby that could conceal more soldiers. By the Ukrainian unit's own account, after roughly 45 minutes of continuous fighting, around 20 Russian bodies lay near the house the three defenders had held, with another 20 counted about 100 meters further down the road, a total of roughly 40 against attackers who reportedly outnumbered the defenders by something like 13-1. All three Ukrainian soldiers survived. It's worth being clear about where this specific number comes from. It's the account of the unit that fought the engagement, not an independently verified casualty count, which is normal for a firefight, this fast-moving and this fog-bound. Nobody from outside that house was in a position to count bodies as they fell. What's independently plausible, based on how this specific war has repeatedly used ground robots to solve exactly this kind of aerial blindness in other sectors, is the tactic itself, not the precise body count it produced. None of this happened in a vacuum. This assault came directly after Ukrainian forces had already pushed Russian troops back nearly 10 kilometers in this same sector, a retreat significant enough to put real pressure on Russian commanders to recover at least some of that ground quickly, and to show visible progress to their own superiors. Rushing available troops into a dense morning fog wasn't a carefully planned operation. It was a gamble that visibility itself would substitute for numbers, made under exactly the kind of pressure that leads commanders to accept worse odds than they normally would, precisely because returning to headquarters with nothing to report was becoming its own kind of career risk. That gamble assumed one specific thing: that fog blinds everyone equally. It doesn't. It blinds drones flying at altitude far more than it blinds a camera moving at ground level. And the side that thinks to make that substitution first gets to see, while the other side is still just listening for engines. Three soldiers held a house in fog thick enough to blind an entire war's worth of drones. The only functioning eyes on that battlefield belonged to a machine crawling along the ground, feeding a picture back to a commander who never lost the ability to see, even when nobody around him could. A single improvisation, made under pressure, that turned a near-total blackout into the clearest picture anyone on that field had all morning. If a wheeled robot moving at head height can now see through weather that grounds an entire fleet of aerial drones, how much longer before waiting for the fog stops being a viable Russian tactic at all?